Well, thanks for the chance to talk about the Underwater Photographer of the Year to you. I'm pleased to say at this time in the afternoon, as well as telling you a little bit about the competition, I've got some very beautiful pictures to show you. I know you've got some up there in the room with you from this year's competition, so I've delved into the archives and pulled out a few of my favourites from down the years. For those of you who don't know me, which is the majority of you, my name is Alex Mustard. I work as an underwater photographer, which is work that takes me to all sorts of interesting places. And I've worked sort of full-time as an underwater photographer for over 20 years now. Originally, or before that, I was a marine scientist. I did my undergraduate degree in oceanography and marine biology, and then my PhD is in marine ecology, and worked for several years as a scientist. But my photography, which was always a passion through that period, but I never imagined it would become a career, kind of took over my life, and I was sort of a passenger on a ride that's taken me to amazing places. And I spend most of my year traveling to wonderful places, photographing amazing underwater sites, and particularly actually these days teaching a lot of underwater photography as well. So I'm sort of well connected in the underwater community. My work is well known. It's sort of published in thousands and thousands of editions of magazines, in books, seen in competitions, and sort of rather unusually, I back in 2018, I received an MBE from Queen Elizabeth for services to underwater photography, which is a very unusual thing to get national recognition for. Certainly the only underwater photography, and I think there's almost never been any photography people recognised. So it's something very proud of, but really rather unusual. Anyway, for a couple of months each year, an entity called UPY, which is the friendly name for the Underwater Photographer of the Year competition, takes over my life for those 2 years, sort of a couple of months each year. And it's that what I'm going to talk about today. This is me on stage at the British Diving Show, using the big screen there to show off our winners from last year's competition. And but UPY is a whole host of activities that are around that. The reason I'm coming to talk to the Crown Estate about it is the Crown Estate have been a fantastic supporter of our competition for most of our modern existence. We're into our 11th year of the modern UPY, and I'll explain why I'm calling it the modern UPY in a few slides' time. But the Crown Estate sponsor a special British Waters category, which is called Living Together. And it's a category that looks to celebrate the relationship between wildlife, nature, and man on the British in the British underwater environment. And we allow that brief to be interpreted very broadly. It's not really a category that's aiming to make any political point. It's simply celebrating beautiful images on that theme and eye-catching images that hopefully will engage the public. And on the left there's a Blenny photo taken by the winner of the category, which was Kirsty Andrews last year, which is a very eye-catching shot. We have a number of other collaborations sort of with the Crown Estate, which some of you will be aware of, some maybe not. Last year we had a big exhibition, a travelling outdoor exhibition, celebrating some of our images, but also talking about the underwater environment in the UK and the Crown Estate's role in that, which you can see on the right there in Glasshouse Street, near to you guys, or those who are in the office in London. But that also travelled to Leicester. And I think another destination, I don't know, because it all happened when I was in the middle of a very messy house move. And I read the emails, but not many of them stuck in my brain. So I didn't catch up on all of that last year. But that was with Rachel Considine from the Crown Estate, who was leading on that from your side. The Crown Estate has also sponsored for a number of years, and the oldest picture I could find was 2019, but I think it goes back further than that. Our exhibition at that British Dive Show, which is a chance for us to put our prints up at the British Dive Show. They get a lot of footfall, and it's great to flash pictures in front of people, but even better to print them, and people can choose how long they spend interacting with them. And this is a great opportunity at the dive show. And these prints have, in various years, gone on and been seen elsewhere as well. And last year and this year, the Crown Estate has also graciously hosted our awards ceremony, and we're coming to your offices this time next week to celebrate UPY 2025. And that's something that's very exciting for us. It really helps add to the gravitas of the competition, having kind of a bricks and mortar location rather than simply existing across a number of locations. And we've got some really fantastic photographers attending from all corners of the world again next week, which we're really excited about. This time next week, we're gearing up to launch the 2025 collection. Those of you in the office have seen far more of them than anyone else in the world, because on those banners behind are some of the winning pictures from this year. We don't tend to put the biggest winners on the banners, just to keep them a little bit secret during the evening. But nonetheless, those pictures are all strictly hidden away. We're busy sort of doing all the preparations at the moment for the big launch, which is everything from preparing websites to our yearbook to we've already emailed all our press contacts. We have a 300-person list of press contacts to tell them when they're going to get them and remind them about the embargo, which runs until next Friday. And we'll send them out the Wednesday, the day before we all travel up to London. And then everything to do with that awards ceremony and various things about that. But it's a very exciting and very busy time for us. We always talk within the group about having UPY blindness at this time of year, whereas we're so busy with so many million jobs. We forget to notice we spelt UPY wrong or something like that. This year was another record entry for our competition. In this modern incarnation of the competition, we've had 11 years, and 9 of those years we've had our biggest ever entry till that point. And that was true again this year. The 2 anomaly years were the 2 COVID years, when obviously there was a lot less underwater photography going on. And those years we saw a dip in entrance. But for the following years, we've always had an increase. And it was our record biggest entry, which it makes me very excited to reveal the winners, because they should be, just on a numbers term, our best ever. And we're really excited about coming up to London to do that, to hand out the gongs and that sort of thing. And actually, one of the great things about the award ceremony is it really allows photographers you've never met to meet together. And the picture at the bottom right there are actually 5 of our, to that point, 10 previous overall winners of the competition all had the chance to gather together and meet them. So I was very pleased that we got a photo of them all together at the same place at the same time. The reason kind of why UPY exists is many, but part of that is that the UK has always been a real focus of underwater photography, underwater imaging. We have, obviously the fantastic BBC Natural History Unit and the associated production companies around Bristol that make, the world's best natural history programs, and a large amount of their content is underwater. But on the stills photography side, the first ever underwater photo in the world was taken by William Thompson in 1856. There's his plaque up in Poole in Dorset, where he lived. And it was off the Dorset coast where he took those first pictures. So that's sort of always made the UK has been quite a focal point for underwater photography and diving, in fact. And in the 60s, when diving as an activity was really taking off, the UK organised some big diving conferences. And to make those conferences attractive, there was an underwater photography element to that. And the first underwater photographer of the year was named in 1965 at one of those big diving conferences. And that's the photo top right, which is a chap called Phil Smith, who was our first underwater photographer of the year. At that point, the award was very much a British-focused award. But he was our first named underwater photographer of the year. And in the picture below is a picture that makes me smile. Is a picture of one of our current judges on the right-hand side there, who's called Peter Rowlands. And he won the title of British Underwater Photographer of the Year back in 1983. So I always enjoy showing that photo. It raises a smile for me. This is a more recent picture, but actually now over 10 years old. And when we launched a modern version of UPY to bring back all these old awards. We did it very much in the collaboration and the blessing of all the pioneers of those early years. And there's a photo with me in the middle here, Peter Rowlands, who you just saw on the previous slide with his moustache on the left-hand side. And the other people in this picture are some of those early pioneers. Sitting in front of me is Phil Smith, our original underwater photographer of the year. Next to him is Colin Doig, another of those early pioneers. And there's Tim Harwood and Jeff Glover as well. Tim on the bottom left side. But all of whom in that low row were previous winners of the top prize in the competition, whether it was called Underwater Photographer of the Year or British Underwater Photographer of the Year. So that's kind of our historical perspective. And 11 years ago now, we decided to bring that competition back. Although the spotlight is often on me, it's very much a team effort, and a number of us involved, particularly myself and Dan Bolt, do a great deal of the admin, but there's a whole team of us. In this picture, the man in the centre of this picture is Martin Edge, who was one of our original judges. Sadly, Martin died last year. But the others in this picture are still all actively involved in the competition. And in addition to the guys in the picture here, we also have Shannon Moran and Tobias Friedrich, who also are major contributors to our competition. Right, on to the stuff that you've been waiting for. Hopefully I've given you a bit of background. But I'm now just going to show you a few of my favourite pictures from the competition to give you a feeling for the scope of images. We're an underwater photography competition. That means, any pictures taken underwater are fair game for us. And obviously everyone's mind immediately races to the great giants of the ocean, the most spectacular scenes you can imagine. On the left there, that's a humpback whale mother and its calf. The calf is up to the right, and obviously a free diver as well, taken in the Pacific Ocean. On the right, it's a gathering of 5 whale sharks all in one photo. So the biggest fish in the sea, 5 of them in a photo at night, lit by the light coming off the back of a diving boat in a lagoon in the Maldives. Amazing photos. Our pictures stretch, from tropical waters like the Maldives right up to the Arctic and Antarctic. This is an orca feeding on herring in the Arctic. And not just the big creatures, but also the smaller creatures as well, such as these seahorses photographed in an inland saltwater lagoon in the Bahamas. And on the left there, is a sand tiger shark photographed off the Atlantic coast of the US in the Carolinas, inside a bait ball of fish. We have some spectacular smaller creatures as well, and I think some of the great surprises from the underwater world come at the smaller scale. On the right, something very familiar, but photographed in a really interesting way, and that's a seahorse picture. This species of seahorse we get in the UK, but this is actually a picture taken in the Netherlands of one of the seahorse, of the same species of seahorse we get obviously on our coast here. And on the left, it is a open water pelagic creature that's photographed by diving at night in open water, in this case in the Gulf Stream. And by hanging lights underneath the boat, you can attract some of these weird and amazing creatures in. And it's one of the thrills of the competition, is the diversity, not just of photographs we get, but of subjects. The great biodiversity of our planet is underwater. And so a competition that opens its doors to the pictures of these creatures, I think we always have amazing things to see. It's not, just a pure nature photography competition. So this is an Indian elephant, of course, but this is a domestic element. So this wouldn't be part of a wildlife photography competition, but being a purely underwater competition, any subject, as long as part of the camera is underwater, and you can see the water line here going up around the end of the trunk, is fair game for us. So this was a winner of our portraits category a few years ago. And of course, we celebrate British waters as well. The history of the Underwater Photographer of the Year competition is rooted in the UK. And so we always have categories celebrating British subject matter. And that's always something that, we always like to surprise the public by how much diversity, how much colour, how many amazing creatures we have here in British waters. It's not just a nature photography, wildlife focused, animal focused competition. We, of course, there are other things underwater to photograph. This is the engine room of a shipwreck, in this case in the Egyptian Red Sea. The wreck is it's called the Chrysula Cay. If any one of you have dived ever in the Red Sea, it's often known as a tile wreck. And you can sneak into this engine room if you're very lucky and make some pictures. Not as easily as spectacular as this one. It really is amazing. If you know the location, this picture is particularly incredible that someone managed to. Was actually Tobias, one of our judges, before he was a judge, took this incredible picture of the engine room, and in all its expanse as a panorama stitched image of multiple frames. Any pictures, though, underwater are fair game for the competition, so we encourage swimming pool model photography, very creative imagery to be used in the competition. We're always looking to see new ways and exciting visions from photographers with their underwater pictures. And we also like to surprise the public with environments that maybe they've never seen before. And this is an underwater cave in Mexico, a really spectacular scene. And I think that's one of the great excitement things about this competition is people often think of underwater photography as a niche part of photography, which of course it is. But that niche actually, once you dive into it, opens out into an incredible diversity of images. And you can't deal with anything to do with the underwater world these days without having to address the fact that the oceans in particular, but also freshwater, are really suffering in various ways in various places. And the Underwater Photography of the Year has a conservation category, which can highlight some of these problems. And I think this sits very well against all the celebratory images in the competition. It reminds people, the whole competition, of the wonders of the underwater world, but also some of the problems that it faces and the things people are doing to try to rectify those problems. We like to have a mix of both challenging and heart-wrenching images and also relatively positive conservation images. Just to finish off with a few points about the contest, I think one of the reasons the contest has become so successful, and it's many times the size of any similar underwater photography contest, is that we've always run it as members of the underwater photography community. And so each decision we make is really with the rest of the community in mind. We don't just put our attention on our winners. Every single photo that enters our competition gets a result. The photographers using the table you can see in front of you. Each image we report back to the photographers how far that picture progressed through our competition. I think that helps guide them as to how impressive we found that picture as judges, and it can really help photographers when they're trying to improve or when they're looking to enter other competitions, because actually if you make it to the semi-finals in UPY, you have a good chance of winning some big prizes in some of the smaller competitions. The other aspect that's really important to us is the outreach of the competition, and we've always worked really hard to make the collection of winning pictures as available as possible to the public with as few barriers. So we put obviously the entire collection on our website, and if you click on the images you can read the photographers' backstories. We don't just put the images there, we like to have some of the personality. All our category winners record a video, so you actually get to see them, meet them, feel them as a person. We publish the winners in a free downloadable yearbook, and we keep those yearbooks online so the old collections can be revisited and enjoyed. And obviously because they're downloadable, people can also take them with them when they travel and things like that and enjoy the collection. And a lot of the keen photographers really like that aspect of our free downloadable yearbooks each year. It's a chance to really spend time with the collection, to see the pictures bigger and have that chance to enjoy them. And then we also make an effort to get the pictures out there in exhibitions. These vary place to place each year. They're sort of limited a bit by our budgets. UPY, is predominantly run by volunteer energy as much as anything else. And so it's more about which venues come to us looking to host exhibitions that allow us to exhibit. But the two here, the one on the left is at the Danish National Aquarium, and they ran a 3-month exhibition of huge prints, which was fantastic for us. On the right, these are pictures up in Milan a few years ago. I can't remember the name of the palazzo that they were at. But, we also have, numerous places in the UK where they've been exhibited as well. And it's always great to see the pictures printed, especially printed really big like this. We take, as I was saying before, we take a lot of effort to get the maximum press coverage for our photographers. The photographers love seeing their pictures in the mainstream media. It's very good for the oceans, very good for underwater photography in general to do this every year. And the photographers love it because anytime someone then searches their name online in the future, they come up, with a link saying Underwater Photographer of the Year, their name, and in mainstream media outlets all over the world, both online and in print. I'm not going to dive too much into that. And as the result of all this press coverage, we always have a lot of television coverage each year. It's always a little bit unpredictable, which particular pictures often catch the zeitgeist that particular year, and those photographers get invited on. It's often our big winners, but sometimes it can be a different picture within the collection that really catches the attention and gets our photographers on the television, both in the UK, but in all sorts of unusual places. There's South Africa in the top left here. There's sort of a very mainstream show, the Kelly Clarkson show, top right in the States. Obviously, the news channels all reported a lot, and on the bottom left, that's an Italian news channel and obviously a BBC news channel with last year's winner, Alex Dawson, on the bottom right there. And the great thing about Great Images is they really do open incredible doors for us. And despite us being, as I was saying, a relatively volunteer-run organisation, most of us now living down, or now I've moved house, pretty much all of us now living in the southwest of England, away from the excitement of the bright lights of the world. Actually, these images open incredible doors and get seen by, with all the media coverage, hundreds of millions of people each year, is an amazing thing. And it's great for the oceans. It's great for, our sponsors and partners. It's great for the whole of underwater photography that the contest gets this coverage, and it's something that we're really proud of, and it keeps us motivated when we're right in the middle of all the horrible admin, as I am at the moment, gearing up for the launch next week. So that's what I prepared for you. I hope that was interesting, and I'm very happy to answer some questions, but I am also on I can hang around for about another 15 minutes, and then I need to go and collect my daughter from school.